Welcome to Trudge the Road. It's sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, and offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and the nation's capital. They can be reached by calling 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict.
My name is Jerry, and I'm a sober alcoholic.
Let's start the show, Jerry, by you telling everyone why we do the show.
Trudge the Road is a radio program dedicated to folks who suffer from the disease of addiction to drugs and alcohol. And every bit as important, family members and friends, we know that you suffer tremendously, and you've got tons and tons of questions. We know that. Our goal here is to try to answer as many as we possibly can, and with the good grace of the Lord above, provide a solution to this incredible dilemma, the disease of addiction.
All right. We have a great show for you today. We are at Caron Treatment Centers, and we are going to have some young ladies with us that are in treatment currently.
It is. It's a bit of an experiment, if you will. This isn't anything we're just walking into haphazardly. We've been talking about doing this for months and consulted a lot of people, a lot of professionals before we decided to go ahead with it. And we are going to do it today. And we're going to take a couple of young ladies who are currently in treatment here at the Caron Treatment Centers in Pennsylvania, and chat with them a little bit about what got them here, what they've learned, and what they hope as they assimilate into the recovering community and as well as back into society. Now, we will respect their anonymity, and we will also follow up. Our goal here is to see how they're doing a year down the road. Now, I need to tell you that they have gone out of primary treatment. Primary treatment is 28 days, and it is the basic treatment. For people like myself, that just wasn't enough, And one of the beautiful things that they offer here at Caron is after that primary treatment is secondary treatment, and that's where these girls are. I think they're all about 60 days clean and sober, and a bit of a terrifying story that got them here, that their families certainly felt the brunt of. And those of you who are not addicted, who maybe have an addicted person in your life, I think will be able to identify possibly with the feelings that their parents and that their loved ones had and have, and the hope that it really has been given here at Caron. Now, these girls look like just typical, ordinary, everyday, see them in the mall, you wouldn't think twice, don't look like a drug addict girl. It's the new face of addiction. And that's why I've asked David Rotenberg, who is the clinical vice president of treatment here at Caron, to participate with me in these interviews to protect, of course, the anonymity of the girls and direct the conversation in a manner which is as therapeutic as possible.
Couple of questions. These girls are addicted to the drug of choice.
One is a heroin addict, and the other one is she calls herself the garbage can, which means it's just like me. I'll do or take anything.
Okay. My second question is, and I don't even know if you have an answer for it, but you brought it up, 28 days. Mm-hmm. 28 days. Where do we get that number from, and why?
I really don't know. I mean, that has been the conventional treatment theory. 28 days, we need you that long to sober you up, kind of get your thinking back together, give you the solution, which is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then assimilate you into the recovering community. And a lot of folks do just really well with that basic 28-day treatment. A lot of folks do well with a basic detox, say a hospitalized detox, and then outpatient treatment. There is levels of severity, I think, of the disease, and certainly a case like mine, which 28 days, in my case, well, actually, let me put it this way, as a chemical dependency counselor, which I was for a long, long time, in that 28 days, somebody would come in and they would be so intoxicated, and the level of inebriation was just such a level that the detox period lasted a week, sometimes even longer, just to get what was on board out so that you could get some kind of an semblance of who this person was. And that is 10 days that is gone. And now, you've got their attention for a little bit, and I mean just a little bit, because at this point, the mind is still really very sick, and you've got an attention span. You would classify these folks, and myself included, at a point of detox like this, as having attention deficit disorder. In other words, you've got about maybe a minute of being able to pay attention, and then that mind just disengages. it's sick. It's been just putrefied by whatever substance we've been using. So that, takes a little bit of time. So you kind of get into that third week and that last week where you've got them back together and they begin to make that plan. Well, what I got to do? What have I got to do?
Right.
And try to stop that, give them the information, and then assimilate them out. So as you see, that is a great deal of information, a huge task to be able to complete in just 28 days. And especially with younger folks who don't have life skills, who don't have coping skills. All of that is new. And, of course, their society, it's okay to drink and take drugs. It's okay to act in this manner, which to them is simply suicide. So to alleviate that ad practicum of their sociology and assimilate them into a healthy one is much more difficult than it would be for an adult. And that is why the secondary treatment is so incredibly helpful, because it's in that period of time that we are developing coping skills, that we are showing them life skills, and that we are making a foundational relationship with the recovering community, because that's where recovery starts, is when they leave the treatment center and assimilate into AA or into NA and begin this lifelong journey, this journey of epic proportion.
I'm thinking of the movie by Sandra Bullock, which was 28 Days.
28 Days, yes.
And then I'm thinking of the movie of Jerry, which was 28 months.
Yeah. Actually, you're not too far off. I was in treatment for 18 months. A long time. But you have to take into consideration, I was living in a tree beforehand. Things had gotten really, really bad. And in that time period, there was so much more than just dealing with my addiction. It was dealing with my inability to be able to live and to exist in a normal manner. I mean, I was, 30 years old, and I didn't know how to, balance a checkbook or pay rent or, all those things would just, I was like a 15-year-old kid, and I had to learn all that. And they gave me the opportunity. That, by the way, was at the Healing Place in Louisville, Kentucky. And I'll be ever so grateful for that, what they gave me.
And now look at you. Here you are, co-hosting this radio show. And
beyond my wildest dreams.
You have a DVD out, Jerry and the 12 Steps. I just want to throw that out there again. It is available by going to our website, which is trudgetheroadradio.com. And if you go there, there's a lot of things for you. You can catch our Twitter feed. Mm-hmm. I tweet something out every day. You can hook up with our Facebook page, which is, if you're just on Facebook, you could go to Trudge the Road Radio, just put that in there, and that'll come up. You can connect with our YouTube page, which is Trudge the Road Radio in the search engine as well, but you can also get some prior episodes on our website. And you can also order a copy of Jerry and the 12 Steps.
Yeah, I hope you do. It's very handy, not trying necessarily to sell it, but people who are trying to learn the 12 steps, or understand, I should say, the 12 steps, can be a bit overwhelming. And what this does is it just breaks it down in the most simplistic manner and gives you not just only an explanation, but hopefully motivation to be able to continue. So if you're a sponsor, if you're in the treatment field, I think that this could be a tool that you'll find a great asset.
I think it should also be acknowledged that at Caron Treatment Centers, they are using it as a treatment tool now.
And I'm very grateful for that, and I pray to God every day that it helps.
Because it's very difficult to get a grasp of the 12 steps. And the one thing about this is that you articulate the steps based on your own experience.
Absolutely. And I think that that's what people connect with, is the fact that we do have very similar experiences in how we get there. And I use those experiences as an example as to how to take this step, or how this step is prevalent in your process to the next one.
Okay, maybe step number one is a difficult step for a lot of people to come to grips with, because you basically have to
surrender. Yeah,
you have to admit that you are powerless. You're powerless over this addiction that you have. Because I know for a long time when I was out there, people would come to me and say, "You got a problem." Yeah. I'm like, I don't. I've got everything under control. I can remember that I dated this girl one time, and I used to say, "You know what? Why don't we just quit?" Because we were both strung out at the time. And she goes, "I can quit anytime I want." I said, "Yeah, well, why don't you quit?" She goes, I don't want to.
I've done the exact same thing.
I said, "Well, why don't you just, humor me and quit for a couple of weeks, and then it'll help me, because I couldn't do it on my own. I was one of those guys, I need a partner to go through this, Right. And she went, "No, I don't feel like it. I'm not going to." And, so I'm, okay, well, I guess I'll keep doing drugs. It wasn't until I finally, separated myself from that scenario that I was actually able to
Realize your powerlessness?
Yeah, realize my well, I think I realized my powerlessness when I couldn't do it on my own, and I kept trying to get somebody to do it with me. I can't do this. I need some help.
And you did need some help, and I'm glad that you found us, and here you are today, happy and healthy.
Yeah, but step 2 is difficult, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6. What would you say the most difficult step is? Is it 1?
Step 4 to me is the most challenging because it's it's a discovery. It's an admission. It's an accounting of our behavior and taking a look at what we have done and what got us here is not easy. It's counterintuitive, and that means I don't want to, and nobody would. Who would want to take a fearless moral inventory of themselves? Nobody would. But we have to. We absolutely have to, because that is where the significance begins. Bringing out, into the light to ourselves exactly who we are not. Because that's what's on that paper. All of that, those behaviors are not a sign of your character whatsoever. They are a sign of the disease, and that doesn't give you a walk on what you did by any stretch of the imagination, but it does give you a little bit of an answer. And we have answers to why that behavior took place and a solution to how to bring it to conclusion so that you can live happy, joyous, and free. The program, the 12 steps are simply this. It's a blueprint for living. We don't know how to live. We don't know how. This gives us an opportunity to live, and the payoff is a spiritual awakening. And when that happens, I'll put it this way, all of your dreams come true because your nightmare is over.
It's called Jerry and the 12 Steps, and it is available via our website, trudgetheroadradio.com. You could also go to our other website, which is recoveryforlifechannel.com. This is Trudge the Road. It's sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you are concerned about yourself or a loved one, call 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. Coming up, Jerry sits down with 2 young ladies.
And David Rotenberg.
And they are going to share their stories of hope right here on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Jerry sits down with Valerie and Christina, 2 young addicts on the road to recovery. That's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
Hi, this is Rich, your co-host for the Trudge the Road radio program, and there's a question I get all the time, and that is, how do we catch prior episodes of Trudge the Road if we miss the radio show? And it's very simple. You just go to youtube.com and in the search engine, type in, without any spaces, Trudge the Road Radio, and all our shows will come up. We also invite you to like our Facebook page, which can be found by typing Trudge the Road Radio with spaces into the search engine. And thank you from Jerry and myself for listening to Trudge the Road.
There is a new phase of recovery, and you see it in the pages of Renew Magazine and at RenewEveryday.com. Renew and RenewEveryday.com are changing the face of recovery for good. Each issue is filled with positive role models, life-affirming stories, encouragement, and ideas to help any life in recovery. Whether you're already enjoying an addiction-free life, have a loved one facing his challenges, or are considering recovery, Renew and RenewEveryday.com can support and inspire you. Join us. Check out RenewEveryday.com to learn more. At Northbound Treatment Services in Newport Beach, California, we believe that treatment is the beginning of a new way of life. Our brand signifies our own commitment to help our clients find new direction and strength on their road to recovery. Our mission is simple: to assist our clients in successfully celebrating 1 year of continuous sobriety. This mission is achieved through unique treatment models, individualized treatment plans, graduated phase systems, and exceptional staff, 12-step philosophies, and a strong alumni program. The Northbound experience focuses on effectively delivering innovative treatment. We are located in the beautiful and vibrant recovering community of Orange County, California. The Northbound experience takes our clients beyond treatment. We are Northbound.
Welcome to Trudge the Road. My name is Jerry. I'm a sober alcoholic, and Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment, with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, and Texas, and offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. They can be reached by calling 800-854-6023 or by going to their website. It's got all kinds of good information, a lot of answers to the questions that you probably have. And it's Caron.org, and that's Caron.org. Thank you very much for listening. If you are on a local radio station, or if you're on YouTube, and if you're in the recovering community, maybe when they get to those non-related AA or NA announcements, if you'd bring up the fact you discovered Trudge the Road, either on the radio or on YouTube, and see if we can get a few more people following, we would appreciate that immensely. And speaking of immensely, we are grateful to that level to our first guest, who is a fellow who's been with us a number of times before, and I hope will be a number of times in the future. David Rotenberg is here, and David is Vice President of Treatment at Caron. He specializes in co-occurring mental health disorders, relapse, and family issues, especially related to adolescents and young adults. And that's kind of what we're going to try and focus on here just a little bit today, is somewhat the new face of addiction, if you will. And first, David, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it.
Jer, always great to be back with you.
It's wonderful. Now, it's kind of hard to describe or define the new face of addiction when it's really difficult and complicated to ever even decide what the old face of addiction was. But what we know it isn't, and what maybe a lot of people have in their head, of course, is the drug addict is the guy, the skinny guy in the trench coat living behind the dumpster with the deep set eyes and very untrustworthy looking. And that's really a very bad picture. Not to say that element doesn't exist, but it's really a fraction of the element of drug addicts. And that's what we never think of grandma who did 25 Valium a day as being a drug addict. But we also look at my own sociology is when I was introduced to recovery when I was 20 years old. Very much so out of my sociology. It was so rare to see somebody trying to get sober or in the rooms or in a treatment center who was at age 20, and that certainly isn't the case now. And be it either the disease worse or society providing more for it, there is a new face of addiction, and that addiction is a youngster. And if you could, because you do this professionally, and to define, if you would, or give an idea to the listeners who it is that we're seeing in treatment today, the new face of addiction.
Okay, Jer. So 20, 30 years ago, if you went to a rehab center, you basically came across adult population, 25, 30, and older. Before that, it was mostly males. Okay, so 30 years ago, the treatment industry was populated with middle-aged males. Now, on Caron's campus alone, you have 113 beds for the treatment of people 25 years old and younger. That's an astounding illustration of the evolution of both Caron and the drug and alcohol treatment industry.
It absolutely is. And on another level, I'll give you an example. Just visiting in my work, in my committed work to Alcoholics Anonymous, on a weekly basis, I go to the detox, a local detox. Now, 10 years ago, just 10 years ago, I would say the average, of course, it's all males, but I would say the average age in there was between the early 30s and mid to late 50s, and it was alcohol. That was the problem. Today, just 10 years later, they're 17, 16, 18, 19, and it's heroin. It's the issue really seeming to be overwhelmingly with opiates, and that seems to be a very significant problem within our society, or the culture, if you would.
When I was growing up in the 1980s, even the worst drug users, drug addicts in high school were not touching opiates. Now, when you come to Caron and you look at the adolescent center, which has kids 13 to 19, 15%, Jer, are on opiate medications or heroin as their drug of choice. 15% of these kids who are white, in many cases, middle and upper middle class kids, suburban kids. I mean, we have a mixed bag of everyone. We have a melting pot. But, again, dispelling the myth that the opiate addict was inner city, black, Hispanic, homeless, HIV positive, any number of issues linked to opiate addiction in the past have been dispelled. That myth is out. Okay, you come to Caron right now and you're walking, you wouldn't know you're not in a private school. Okay, when you look at these kids, they're bright, articulate, athletic, pretty, handsome, intellectually gifted. They come from high-functioning families, and oh, by the way, they're on opiate meds, along with, by the way, 2 or 3 other drugs and co-occurring psychiatric issues in the mix. So the changing face of addiction treatment really includes not just the ability to detox middle-aged alcoholics and then send them on their way after 28 days. The changing face of addiction treatment looks a lot like, hey, I got a polysubstance dependent, 3 or more drugs. I got a person 17 and a half years old in the adolescent center. That's the average age. And he or she has got not 1, but 2 co-occurring psychiatric issues on top of their 3 or more drugs of choice. That's the changing face of the addict coming into treatment at Caron. And with it comes the changing evolution and clinical competency of a trend-setting industry leader like we are.
And the program works. I mean, I watch that all the time, face to face. It's fantastic, and you're to be complimented for it. Now, we have been fortunate to have a couple of guests who are going to volunteer to come on and chat with us, and their names are Veronica and Christina. Excuse me, it's Valerie and Christina. And we're going to meet up with them here and talk in just a second. But if you would, give us a little background, the 2 young ladies, kind of a little bit of their sociology and the fact of where they are here within the program at Caron.
Sure. These 2 girls happen to be past the primary stage of treatment. The initial 28 to 31 days we call primary treatment. These 2 friends of ours are in extended care. These 2 patients are in extended care at Caron. Probably around 40% to half of our patients are referred to extended care. And so another myth, Jer, that needs to be dispelled is that patients go for treatment for 28 days and then they're out. Okay, that's just not the case anymore. And in fact, the younger the patient, the more likely extended care and extended stay is a possibility. Okay, and so these 2 young ladies get to extended care for any number of reasons, which they'll talk about, including co-occurring psychiatric issues, including anxiety, body image issues, multiple drug and alcohol issues, school dysfunction, family dysfunction, and any number of other variables which might lead you to refer them to extended care in the first place.
Absolutely. And you know, it's the fact of the matter is it was, if you want to look at it this way, there's 2 sides to the coin, a lot easier for us as drug addicts being, of course, I was about 10 years before you in the 70s. It was a lot easier to maintain that addiction and than it is today. It's a lot more complicated. And just, you know, the change in sociology obviously is equated to this in a certain degree, but the aggressive form of treatment and understanding the complexity of the disease is a lot more than really has been addressed even in the last 30 years. So this is a phenomenal opportunity.
I think the upside for the kids that we have today are that their families are very committed. Their families have resources and willingness to keep them here, help them stay here, and participate in the treatment process, which I think is a really critical component, not just for the family's education, but for the kids, the young ladies' continuing care planning. Okay, it's not atypical, Jer, for a kid in treatment here to have a family history of dysfunction, to have a family history of addiction and or co-occurring mental health issues. So
it's more common than it is uncommon.
It's absolutely a stronger correlation in our society than it is to the general population, meaning you're more likely to have a family member in an active addiction and or with co-occurring psychiatric issues. So to take a kid into treatment for 28 days and then just put them back into a dysfunctional home does not work.
I'm the perfect example of that. But, you know, the beauty of it is when you address this here and bring it to conclusion, or at least bring it up on the table where it can be dealt with, is you don't know what a relief that would be, is to have to wait 20 years and go through breakthrough, you know, and have that all the way, you know, part of your psyche until, you know, you get to that point where you can address those deeper issues, which I think most of us come in here with. I certainly was one. And, you know, and before we take the break, too, it was, and I'm just speaking on my own experience, was really never able to enjoy the opportunity of doing the 12 steps until I had extended care, until my treatment lasted past those 28 days. And it lasted quite a bit past those 28 days, and I needed absolutely every second of it because this is the most overwhelming disease that I think exists. And we can describe that and talk about that more in detail when we come back. And I'm really excited. We're going to meet Valerie and Christina here in just a couple of minutes, so stay tuned for that. These young ladies are very brave to come on here and chat with us today. This is Trudge the Road, and Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services, as well as young adult male and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, don't fear. Call the number 800-854-6023 or go to the website caron.org. That's CARON.org. We'll be back with David and Valerie and Christina coming up in just a moment here on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Jerry continues discussion with Valerie and Christina as they share their experience, strength, and hope. That's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
At Northbound Treatment Services in Newport Beach, California, we believe that treatment is the beginning of a new way of life. Our brand signifies our own commitment to help our clients find new direction and strength on their road to recovery. Our mission is simple: to assist our clients in successfully celebrating 1 year of continuous sobriety. This mission is achieved through unique treatment models, individualized treatment plans, graduated phase systems, and exceptional staff, 12-step philosophies, and a strong alumni program. The Northbound experience focuses on effectively delivering innovative treatment. We are located in the beautiful and vibrant recovering community of Orange County, California. The Northbound experience takes our clients beyond treatment. We are Northbound.
Hi, this is Rich, your co-host for the Trudge the Road radio program, and there's a question I get all the time, and that is, how do we catch prior episodes of Trudge the Road if we miss the radio show? And it's very simple. You just go to youtube.com and in the search engine, type in, without any spaces, Trudge the Road Radio, and all our shows will come up. We also invite you to like our Facebook page, which can be found by typing Trudge the Road Radio with spaces into the search engine. And thank you from Jerry and myself for listening to Trudge the Road.
Welcome back to Trudge the Road. It's good to have you here today. Thank you for listening. Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Treatment facilities they have for you in Pennsylvania, Florida, and Texas. Offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philly, and D.C. You can reach them by calling 800-854-6023 or by going to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. Wonderful information is there and a lot of answers to the questions. And that's what Trudge the Road Radio is all about. This is a program that is dedicated to folks like myself who suffer from the disease of addiction to alcohol and to drugs. And every bit as important, family members and friends, you suffer terrifically. And we know that you have a lot of questions. Hopefully we can answer some of those questions and with the good grace of the Lord above, provide a solution to this tremendous dilemma we have, which is the disease of addiction. As I said, and I hope you were here earlier, David Rotenberg is with us here from Caron, Vice President of Clinical Treatment. And we've got a couple of young ladies who've been brave enough and humble enough to be able to sacrifice a little of their time here while they're in the extended care program of Caron. And we'd like just to get to know you just a little bit better and then find out more about you. This is Valerie. Valerie, thank you. How are you? We're doing well. Thank you very much. And over here is Christina. Christina, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We're well. Thank you very much. Valerie, just give us a little bit of a background. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how old you are, kind of where you're from. You don't have to be specific. Give us an idea of the area of the country.
All right. Well, my name's Valerie. I'm from Maine. I'm 18 years old. And I'm here for a heroin addiction.
Heroin addiction. Yes. Old heroin.
Yes.
I am familiar. All right.
Sure.
A little bit about you, Christina.
Well, I'm 16. I'm from New Jersey, the suburbs, and I am what they would call a garbage head.
You just like it all, huh?
I do.
Yeah, I can kind of relate to that, too. Jiminy Christmas. Well, it sounds like you're both in the right room here. Mm-hmm. And David is with us and just described, if you were here, hopefully in the last segment, a little bit about the new face of addiction. And the new face of addiction is sitting right in front of us here, David. And give us a little bit of an idea of the way that you communicate with people of this age and this demographic. And maybe, if they will, tell us a little bit more about kind of what got them here.
No doubt, Jerry. The way I communicate with adolescents and Caron in general, I think we strive to be the first place that meets you guys with a level of unconditional positive regard. We don't judge you. We don't try and punish you. We try to treat addiction as a disease. Okay, we aim really to be the first authority figure in your recent history to not punish you and to embrace you. And I think what that does is it allows you to feel safe. It allows you to feel secure, embraced, and eventually move forward. I think the other thing we do really well, Jerry, is we use the patient community itself to promote stage evolution and positive growth. Valerie, how do you think? Talk to the audience about how the patient community itself can be a sort of an intervention arm, if you will.
Well, the patients were all really, really close with each other, and I came into it thinking I wouldn't get along with anyone, that, I'm not going to find anyone else like me, and I'm not going to get along with the other girls. And honestly, they're all like my sisters now. We're all really supportive of each other, and I know a lot of girls come into Caron thinking that they're not addicts and, they'll grow out of it. And I know every single one of them has been convinced that they are an addict because of what we've said to them. So it's just like a really helpful and supportive community here.
So, Jer, easy for me, you, and a bunch of older adults and drug and alcohol professionals to do step one for kids like Valerie and Christina. Easy for us to say, hey, you're a drug addict, you're an alcoholic or whatever, but much more potent when the 17 and 18-year-old girl sitting next to you in group talks about her addiction, her self-diagnosis, and her step one, if you will. Could you, Christina, talk about step one for you as it relates to your entry into Caron and how you are now with step one?
Absolutely. So I have been in other programs, and I never saw my drugs as an issue. I always saw my mental health as a bigger problem in my life. So I didn't really work on it. I didn't follow a program, and I relapsed after 8 months. And when I came here, I was in the same mindset. I told my counselor, I said, I think I have a problem with drugs. I think I use them to escape reality, but I don't think I'm a drug addict. And it took me a matter of days to realize I was wrong. So working a formal step one isn't just saying like, okay, I think I'm a drug addict. There's work to it. You need to fully believe that you can never pick up a drug or drink again. And once you know that that's the rest of your life, then you've completed step one.
So for a 16-year-old kid to say, I'll never do something again, seems like such a long, vast amount of time. How do you pull back and say, the old cliche, one day at a time? How do you start to do it? How do you cope with that?
That's honestly, if I were to think about never using again for the rest of my life every day, I would use. I have to take it one day at a time. Like, okay, I maybe I'll get high tomorrow, but today I won't. And then the next day, okay, maybe just stay sober today, and then tomorrow I might get high. But like each day I'd choose not to get high. And if I can keep that mentality, it's less stressful and it's less scary to me to think of the rest of my life ahead of me with not another drink or drug.
You hear the evolution, Jerry, in her voice and in her story. The other thing you'll notice when you work with adolescents, the ones that stay for 3 and 4 months versus 1 month and the traditional 28 days, you know what starts to happen? They start to become sober in their identity and in their thought.
Kind of a sober maturity.
That's right. And you talked about, when you were in your 28 days, you were still feeling crazy. I'm using hand quotes here, folks. You were feeling crazy. You were feeling out of sorts. You're much closer to a drug and alcohol active using identity in the first 28 days and in the detox stage than you are at day 100 and day 120. And with adolescence, or in the lifespan development challenge of adolescence is what? Identity development. These kids sitting here 100 days sober, surrounded by other girls who are 50 to 100 days sober, have a much stronger foundation in recovery. And what's critical is a much stronger, sober, recovering identity.
Yeah, now Caron really basically has built a sociology of that, of these people of their own age who act amongst themselves as a peer group, if you will, but more as a support group, and of course that loving friend group. That's something that really is new in comparison to when I got here. The sociology was what it was, and that may be, again, a 35, 40-year-old male, but I'm 20 years old.
One of the things that, Valerie talked about beautifully, and Christina touched on it a little bit too, is the positive peer culture at Caron. When all else fails, the adult authority figure is still second tier in terms of potency as opposed to the peer group. Your peer group can hammer home step one, as Christina was talking about, as strongly and even more potently than an award-winning clinician can. Why? Because you guys follow peers. and they become your strength and your source of any number of things from sociology onward. And your thought process, your peers are everything to you. And so sober peer to sober peer is the most potent form of feedback that we can have. So
Absolutely.
again,
that responsibility to your own culture. Valerie, and just, if I could take, you're 18 years old and very young, and a lot of people who are listening are probably asking themselves, how is it really possible that this 18-year-old could have got hooked on heroin? Can you take us back and give us an idea of how it started? Or, did you just pick up heroin one day, or was it a graduating process? Did you start with something else and found that made you feel better and it came on and grew and grew?
Well, what happened for me was I've always been really fascinated with drugs and alcohol my entire life. My dad was an alcoholic, so I kind of told myself, all right, I won't drink because that way I won't be an alcoholic, but I can try drugs. It's not a big deal. And so about a year ago, I started heavily drinking. I had a 21-year-old boyfriend when I was 15, so we were drinking a lot, and then I started getting into Percocets. And what ended up happening was my 21-year-old boyfriend passed away last September. And I just couldn't handle it. I hated dealing with, the guilt I felt, the sadness I felt. So I started doing heroin, and heroin just made me feel like I didn't have to feel sad anymore. I didn't have to feel the guilt anymore. I didn't feel anything really. I felt empty, and I loved that feeling because I didn't want to have to deal with my emotions. So that's basically how it started for me.
So pain kind of seems to be the. I did this as a counselor when I was doing treatment on a regular basis, and I think you'll appreciate it. I would go in and I learned it from somebody else. I learned everything. It's nothing original here. And we would make an alcoholic or a drug addict out of this. I'm a crazy mad doctor, and I've got this beaker here, and we're going to put the magic ingredients in. And I'd start you off and say, let's put in fear, and then somebody let's put in hate, put in resentment, put in loneliness, put in sadness, and we get all those, and I say, we got it made. Is that an alcoholic? Is that a drug addict? What's missing from there?
Well, for me, I think guilt's missing because I felt a lot of guilt for my friend's death. So I think that was like a major factor for my abuse.
Really? Yeah, and that's true. But you know what's really missing from there that you didn't see? Alcohol.
Yeah.
See, and what that doesn't prove anything, but I think it innately kind of shows that we already know. We already know what makes up the alcoholic and the drug addict. It's those feelings that are inside that invisible beaker I had. Now, to show you the other side of the coin, on Family Day, when we bring mom and dad in here and we say, okay, I'm this crazy scientist and we're going to make an alcoholic. This is the crazy beaker. What are we going to put in here? Well, they can't scream alcohol fast enough. Because, see, they still focus on that as being the problem. And I think that you, too, without saying so, have identified that the alcohol and the drugs really weren't the problem.
I used drugs to numb my feelings, similar to what Ashley was talking about. But my mental illnesses, I had an eating disorder and self-harm issues, and those all started way before my drug use.
You were a cutter?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And that's why, David, are we seeing cutters so much now as to where in our sociology we did not?
You heard Valerie talk about escape, running from pain, trying to deaden and numb feelings. One of the dynamics that we find with cutting and really self-injurious behavior, SIB, because there's more forms of it than just cutting, is the same dynamic as addiction. We use it to escape our difficult emotions and feelings. We use it to escape and feel numb. We use it to get away. And I think what happens, interestingly enough, Jer, with cutting is you get a tolerance to it. You get preoccupied with it. You get cravings for it. You're seeing a real parallel between SIB, cutting, and other drug and alcohol usage. Christina, talk a little more about your psychiatric and psychological issues and how that intertwines with your drug and alcohol use. You called yourself a garbage head. You'd use anything, including cutting, to escape. Talk about how they intertwine.
How do you look at the issues, those issues,
as similar
or evolving themselves into the addiction? Right? Okay.
I have to say the first negative coping skill I've ever used was cutting, and it's exactly what Dave was talking about. It progressed. It was the same thing as my addiction. It got worse. It got more frequent. I get cravings. I started 4 years ago, and I'm still struggling with that aspect of my recovery. And to me, just like Dave said, all my eating disorder, I was anorexic, and that was all about controlling. It was the only thing I thought I could control in my life. I had some sexual abuse when I was 10. And so I always felt like I needed to control something because I couldn't control what people did to me. And that was how I took it out. And eventually I found drugs.
Yeah, we talk about the changing face of treatment and addiction. Okay, Christina is a perfect example of what you would see in the adolescent and young adult female world at Caron. Okay, and what I mean is eating disorder and body image issues tied directly to her drug use. Okay, what do you find with our girls? There's a lot of pressure to stay thin,
Sure.
to stay pretty. And guess what? Drugs, especially stimulant meds and cocaine,
Right.
do a magical, wonderful job for the initial phases. They keep you up at night. They keep your appetite suppressed. They allow you to have energy and do other stuff and feel euphoric. Okay, and stay thin and feel prettier or able to keep up with the other girls. What happens though is that ongoing use of that stuff not only depletes you physically, it depletes your brain chemistry and causes major depressive issues. Okay, and what do drug addicts use to treat depression? More drugs and booze.
Right.
So you can see
the
this cyclical.
Right.
Yes.
It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. We're going to talk a lot more to these fine young ladies, Valerie and Christina, who we appreciate very much being here, coming back in just a moment. We'll also explain to you the phenomenon of craving. I know that they've both used the word craving, and for those who don't have this disease, you may not understand what that is. We'll make sure that you do. And again, thank you so much to Caron. They sponsor Trudge the Road, and we'll be back in just a moment here. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about a loved one, if you're concerned about yourself, pick up the phone and call 800-854-6023 or go to the website, which is caron.org. That's CARON.org. My name is Jerry. I'm a sober alcoholic. Rich will be along here in a little while. David Rotenberg is with us. And we've got Valerie and Christina, who are in extended care treatment here at Caron as our guests, and we appreciate that much. And we'll be back in just a moment on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Jerry wraps up this week's show with David Rotenberg on the changing face of addiction. That's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
At Northbound Treatment Services in Newport Beach, California, we believe that treatment is the beginning of a new way of life. Our brand signifies our own commitment to help our clients find new direction and strength on their road to recovery. Our mission is simple: to assist our clients in successfully celebrating 1 year of continuous sobriety. This mission is achieved through unique treatment models, individualized treatment plans, graduated phase systems, and exceptional staff, 12-step philosophies, and a strong alumni program. The Northbound experience focuses on effectively delivering innovative treatment. We are located in the beautiful and vibrant recovering community of Orange County, California. The Northbound experience takes our clients beyond treatment. We are Northbound.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Trudge the Road. Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment, with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, and Texas, offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. They can be reached by calling 800-854-6023 or by going to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. This show, Trudge the Road, is dedicated to folks who suffer from the disease of addiction to alcohol and to drugs. And every bit as important, family members and friends who suffer tremendously. We know that you've got a lot of questions. Our goal here, answer as many of those questions as we can, and with the help of the good Lord above, bring a solution to this incredible dilemma, which is the disease of addiction. We are blessed today to have with us David Rotenberg, a regular guest who is Vice President of Clinical Treatment here at the Caron Treatment Center in Wernersville, Pennsylvania, and Valerie and Christina, who are in the extended care program, teenagers, basically, very, very young, and tremendous stories of torture of the body, mind, and soul that brought them here. We're going to find out just a little bit more about that in just a second. But both of you had brought up the word craving and how we crave for drugs. And if you don't have this disease, well, it's kind of hard to understand, because you may crave for a chocolate bar once in a while, but that's really not craving. The phenomenon of craving was actually discovered by Dr. Silkworth, and you'll read about him in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he called it the allergy to our disease. And the fact of the matter is, we're craving something right now, and I bet you don't even know what it is, do you? air. You're craving air and you don't even know. But if I were to take a plastic bag and slip it over your head, well, you'd realize that craving pretty quick, wouldn't you? And you'd do anything to get that plastic bag because your brain is saying, get this off of my head or we're going to die. Well, craving for us as alcoholics and drug addicts is the exact same thing. It's not our brain saying, let's go out and party and have a good time and celebrate. Our brain is saying, get that drug or that alcohol or you are going to die. That is the phenomenon of craving, and that is somewhat what predicates the behavior mechanism that brings so much of us in here. And I hope that that helps folks understand a little bit about what we as drug addicts and alcoholics feel when we talk about craving. The torture of body, mind, and soul is the description in the big book of what we as alcoholics and drug addicts go through, and we'll go ahead and include family members and friends. They go through the same thing. But if you could, David, take Valerie and Christina on a little bit of a trip to what it was like when they got here, you know, how you felt when you got here, and walk us through a little bit about what you experienced while you were here and how you feel now or where you are now. How does that sound?
So I had the mindset that I would come here, leave in 30 days, go home, back to all my old friends, and only use occasionally, only when I really needed it. And going through it, I realized that I actually am an addict, and no, I can't use it ever again. And now I'm totally fine with being sober. I'm much happier being sober. Through my addiction, I put myself through so much more anxiety and stress that I really needed.
Can you recall the pain, the way you felt when you walked in the door here?
Well, I had 10 days clean, so luckily I wasn't sick anymore from the withdrawals.
Let me ask you another question then, okay? Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to be dope sick?
It's the worst feeling I've ever experienced. You technically can't die from withdrawals, but you feel like you're going to die. You have a pounding headache. You feel like you have the flu. You have chills and fevers. Like you can't get cold. You can't get hot. Like you feel like you're going to throw up. A lot of the times I did throw up. You can't keep anything down. You literally feel like you're going to die. It's the worst feeling in the world. And you know the only thing that's going to help is to do heroin.
So what Valerie's describing, as you say, Jared, dope sick, I mean, the first thing a heroin addict needs to do is to find heroin. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's it. It's all consuming. So you talk about mind, body, soul, spirit. The first thing you're doing when you wake up as a heroin addict is you have to get high, which means what and how? How do you do that when you're 18 years old? You steal, you deal, you take from your parents, you devastate your loved ones, you don't go to school.
Yep.
You don't do a heck of a lot of things. And it's, that template was really the alcoholic 50 years ago.
Right.
Now you've got an 18-year-old senior in high school sitting here telling you this. Amazing. The changing face of addiction.
That is phenomenal. Does that kind of, Valerie, describe your journey to the doors of the Caron treatment centers?
Well, during my addiction, I was stealing. I still had a car. I still had a job. I still went to school, kind of. But honestly, if I wasn't here, I would not have graduated high school. There's no way in hell I would have graduated.
When you said you were stealing, what were you stealing?
I would go to houses and steal from parties. I would steal from cars. I would steal from friends. I would rob people. I would steal anything I could get. I would steal from my parents. My bank account has 3 cents in it because I used all the money in it.
So that would be considered a journey of epic proportion. Would you concur with me on that? Now, on that same note, would you agree that you've begun a new journey of epic proportion?
Oh, definitely. Being sober and being in recovery is definitely a new journey, and it's hard to go through because obviously we all have cravings, we all want to use, but we just can't, especially being in treatment. There's no way. It's not possible to get high here, and it's just, yeah, it's a tough journey, but it's worth it in the end because it's not worth it being an addict. It just wasn't worth doing all those things every single day. It just wasn't worth it for me.
Yeah, I think it's important to identify something Valerie says, and Christina's shaking her head yes, too. The fact is you have cravings 100 days into sobriety, not just during the detox phase.
Oh, yeah.
And so what do we talk about in recovery and in the 12-step rooms and in outpatient and long after that? People, places, and things. You have cravings long after you're detoxed. The mental, psychological aspect of this disease. That is why when you surround yourself with healthy people, you are insulating yourself and keeping yourself safe. If you're trying, the typical adolescent and young adult addict sometimes tries to leave treatment, go back to their old peers, and just not use. Throw in a craving, throw in a period of depression, And guess what you got? You got a relapse right on your doorstep.
Right. Now, and back to Caron here, and one of the themes that you use or slogans is recovery for life. And the preparation of these young people is not just to finish their treatment here, but to assimilate into the recovering community for life.
Well said. And I think Caron, as an organization, has become really well versed in not just assimilating young people while they're here in Pennsylvania, but we know pockets where older adolescents and young adults live now, Jerry, where you can actually market these territories: Boca Raton, Florida; Scranton, Pennsylvania; Southern California. Okay, just to name 3 communities where people between the ages of 20 and 30 can live sober, can go to college sober, can join the workforce sober, can find a sober roommate. And again, going back to something we talked about earlier, they can establish a sober identity, which is so hard to do during the ages of 20 to, let's say, 30, the young adulthood. It's so because there's so few others to choose from. And so you guys have to know where to go to find these people and assimilate and fit in.
Absolutely, and I think you're getting the best lesson of it here right now. Christina, a little bit about how you felt when you got here, when you came, those feelings. We can imagine that you weren't feeling well at all physically, but kind of what was going through your head as you walked through the doors here, knowing that it was either over or it was the beginning.
So I came here on an ultimatum. My mom said I'm either on the streets or I go to rehab. She told me it was a 28-day program. I was living with my ex-boyfriend at the time, and I was like, it's okay, babe. Like, we'll come back. I mean, I'll come back in a month, just 30 days, and we'll get high. It'll be great. So I walk into Caron. Obviously, like you said, I was very sick. I was coming down off ecstasy, and I was like, whoa. I felt lost. I felt alone, empty. And I didn't know what to do. And the next day, an overwhelming amount of sadness came over me, guilt, shame. I was finally like sober, and I didn't like it. I'm almost done with my treatment stay here, and I have gained so much out of Caron, and I've been educated, and I know how I want to live my life now. I want to be sober, and now I actually have genuine happiness. It's not because I put a drug in me and I'm happy for 2 minutes. It's that I can enjoy things and have real conversations with people.
What will you do? I'm assuming your boyfriend is still out there using?
Yes.
What are you going to do about that relationship?
Well, he is my ex-boyfriend right now.
Okay, so in other words, you came to treatment, he was your boyfriend, and now you've broken up?
Yes.
Because drug and alcohol, for you to stay sober, is for you to remove yourself from him.
Yeah, he's been in active addiction for 6 years.
When you hear that, you pat this kid on the back twice.
Oh, yeah.
When was the last time you met a 16-year-old girl that was willing to make that level of sacrifice?
This could be the first.
Okay, so again, that's the power of recovery talking. And in the case of both girls, Valerie and Christina, when they first got here, Jerry, what did you hear? Reservations. I'm going to go back and I'll use a little bit of heroin. That's funny. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or in typical addict fashion, I won't use heroin, but I'll smoke a little weed.
Yeah.
Or
That's my favorite.
Yeah. Or Christina says, don't worry, honey, I'll be right back and we'll get high right away. Listen to the transformation. When people tell you the treatment doesn't work, I beg to differ. Listen to what you have here.
Yes, absolutely. And a tip of the hat to Caron. I think it is just absolutely fantastic what you're doing. And we're proud of you kids and more. We're grateful. We're grateful to God who gave you the opportunity to be able to get this treatment. And thank you to Caron who has provided so many people this opportunity. And truly an absolutely blessed place. Now, I don't want you to project or anything of that nature, but I'm sure that, as you assimilate from Caron back into the real world, you kind of got some plans, anything in the future? What about you, Valerie?
For me, I plan on going to a halfway house down in Florida. Delray, Florida is a really good place for recovery, so I plan on going down there. And I'm sick of winter, so I'm happy I'm going somewhere where it's warm.
We both have gotten a taste of Florida, and once that happened, wintertime is never. That's a good plan. That's a good, and that short-term plan, positive with a good outcome, I know. Now, what about you, Christina?
I'm going to Louisiana to a halfway house called The Steps. It's because I'm 16, I'm underage, so I need 24-hour supervision. But other than that, it's like a regular halfway house.
Well, I need 24-hour supervision, and I'm allowed over 16. So I think that's absolutely wonderful. And again, it is that plan that Caron offers. It's that recovery for life. And for all of us in this room, that's what we're doing. It's recovery for life. Christina and Valerie, thank you so very, very much for sharing your time, your experience, and your strength with us. I promise you'll be in my prayers, and continue doing what you're doing one day at a time. And remember, as I said, you can't keep it unless you give it away. Keep that in mind, won't you, please? David Rotenberg, as always, you're the best. Thank you so very much for helping out today. I appreciate it immensely.
Always a pleasure, Jerry.
And again, thank you so much to Caron, who sponsors Trudge the Road. Caron is a nonprofit, leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializing in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, the phone number is 800-854-6023, or the website is caron.org. That's CARON.org. This is Trudge the Road on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You've been listening to Trudge the Road. If you'd like to catch prior episodes, you can visit our website, trudgetheroadradio.com, and keep listening for new episodes on this great radio station, which is part of the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
Thank you for listening to Trudge the Road. The opinions expressed in the show are those of myself, Jerry, my co-host, Rich, and our guests, and not necessarily those of the Caron Treatment Centers. For more information regarding the show, go to our website, trudgetheroadradio.com.